It is 5 o'clock on the West Coast, so let's kick off and get started here. Hopefully, we'll have a few more people showing up, but today's meetup is on exploring monkey tools. Before we get into that, I'm going to do the normal for all of these things, where we go and skip past the screen with my face on it and jump into thanking the sponsors. So, as always, Skillwave is our title sponsor that we have for all of our user groups here at VanPUG, and this is the training company I run with my partner Matt Allington, where we teach you how to be awesome at Excel and Power BI. Excelguru is the parent company of Skillwave and also the distributor of Monkey Tools, which is the subject that we'll be talking about today. Our next meetups that we have coming up, our Power BI track, we're going to be running at a 9 a.m. Pacific start time on October 24th. We've got Ann Walsh who's going to be joining us to talk about star schemas in Power BI, so that's pretty cool. And we are very close to announcing what the next Excel meetup will be. Oh, hey, look at that. We are super close here because we've actually got something in here for him. So Diarmid Early is going to be joining us to talk about something cool about let and lambda functions. I don't know the exact title yet, and I'm not 100% sure on the time, but that will be coming up as well, so stay tuned for that. Just a quick note before we dive into the topic about Monkey Tools. I always like to share what's new in Monkey Tools. So some of the things that have come out over the last little while, we've got some better license management. If you guys want to see that, I'll show that. We've got a new DAX indenter that has been released, and we've got some indentation options that go with it. You can now also indent your DAX in BiblioMonkey and DaxLoof by using Control-I. We'll actually re-indent the DAX if you're making changes there. And naturally, there's loads of bug fixes as always. I actually managed to get a build out earlier today that has some more bug fixes inside of it. We'll look at some of these as well as a bunch of other things a little bit later on. But of course, if you're looking to get a copy of Monkey Tools, you can download it at monkeytools.ca. I'm also going to mention before we dive into this that we have an entire course on using Monkey Tools, which is completely free, hosted at Skillwave. This is helpful because that has about 5.5 hours of material in it. And well, today's meetup, I'd like to try and keep it to an hour-ish. So there's obviously a lot of stuff that we're not going to cover. But if you're looking for, the ability to get in, work with data samples and try these things out and learn how the tool works, there's a lot of material that's available for free at Skillwave. Speaking of Skillwave, just a couple of quick notes here. My Excel Fundamentals Academy, the next kickoff date is November 13th. We just welcomed our latest registrants into the session yesterday. This is a fantastic training course if you're looking to just get up to, fill in knowledge gaps around Excel formulas and pivot tables, get started with Power Query. This is a great program to get you started. It is fully coached. You got access to all of the Ask Ken sessions, so you can actually get help with your problems, as well as some great material there. So maybe you or somebody else in your organization needs to upskill or fill in knowledge gaps. The Excel Fundamentals Academy is a great resource. Likewise, our next kickoff date for our Self-Service BI Academy is on November 13th, 2024. This is my premier training program. We've just added some new material into this one as well. There's now over 50 hours of training and coaching that goes on in this, plus access to all of the Ask Ken sessions that we have during the year. Those are very lively, lots of fun. I always enjoy those. You got access to my books, my recipes, you got access to Monkey Tools as well. Lots of good stuff that happens in this. So if you're looking for a fantastic training program to really help you up your game with Excel and Power BI, this is the place to go. All right. This meetup, along with all meetups, will be recorded or is being recorded and will be hosted at the Skillwave's YouTube page. Trip over my words right now. I will get that up within about 24 to 48 hours. You will get a notification if you signed up and RSVP'd through the meetup group to let you know. Last thing I always like to close off with here is if you'd like to come and speak to our meetup, we're always looking for people who are interested in sharing the cool things they do with Excel and Power BI. Just fill out the little survey here, get in touch with us, and we will get you on our show. And that is it for this particular slide deck. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close this one off and we're going to switch over to the slide deck that I want to talk about today, which is this one. And I'm just going to drop a little link in the chat here that has a quick little survey that you can fill out for me at menti.com. Not too many questions. I'm just always curious to know what the audience is that we actually have here. it kind of helps me sort of target the presentation just a little bit as well. So if you can fill that out and fill out those questions, that'd be great. As I say, the link's in the chat. I'm going to move this one forward in just a second once I get the presentation open on my screen. So here we go. All right. Just in case folks aren't aware of who I am, basically, my name is Ken, obviously. I am clicking in the wrong places. I am an accountant, an FCPA, FCMA based in Canada. I run a little website called excelguru.ca. We've got a blog and a forum, all kinds of good stuff there. And I'm one of the founding partners behind the Skillwave Training platform. I am a Microsoft MVP, have been since 2006. I'm currently awarded in 2 categories, both Office Apps and Services and Data Platform, which is the category that looks after Power BI. As you might have guessed by now, I'm also a software developer. I am an author. I've written the Monkey Tools add-in for Excel. I also have written a couple of books that you might be familiar with, M is for Data Monkey and Master Your Data with Excel and Power BI. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to quickly switch out and take a look at the survey. We don't have a ton of people here, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to vote on this. So basically, oh no, we've only got about 3 participants in there. Hey, come on, the rest of you, where are you? All right, join in at menti.com and drop in the code there. Looks like everybody's using formulas that's voted here, tables and pivot tables and Power Query. That's cool, glad to see that. Power Pivot, not as much, and DAX, okay, fair enough. If you're not using Power Pivot, you're probably not using DAX. VBA, a couple of you, all right, interesting enough. Obviously not a massive survey. Oh, there we go, got a couple more votes on different things here. Good, excellent. And pretty much the same story, right? So we're leaning more towards formulas and pivot tables and Power Query, not as much in the Power Pivot and DAX side of things. Not a problem, no worries. Always curious. As far as experience with Monkey Tools, it looks like you must have been blocked from filling out this page until I actually got here. So hopefully you can throw some votes into this one for me as well. I thought I had this all configured so that it would actually allow you to advance without me, but apparently not. So I'm gonna have to go back and figure out what's going on in that page. So. I'm assuming that everybody is here has actually heard of it, and obviously one person really likes it. Thank you for voting for the bananas vote. I appreciate that. That is good stuff. And let me just go forward, and that's the end of it. All right, fair enough. I thought I had 3 questions in there. Man, I feel like I just have not done my due diligence on this one here. Apparently there's only 2. Okay, anyhow, let's kick that aside. What's up? He says, wait. Maybe not. All right.
The 3rd question has popped up.
It has. And, you know, you only test it how many times and it doesn't want to do what it's supposed to do in the middle of the presentation. Let me just go back in there again. So
it says
yes,
the presenter hasn't changed slides yet.
Interesting. And I did not think that the presenter had actually configured this thing to actually restrict it so that you couldn't see it at the time. So, all right. So question number 1 was this guy. We got 5 votes on it. Everybody said Excel. See, that was the question I was missing. There we go. All right, fair enough. You're all Excel first people. You're my kind of people. That's awesome. And then as far as the votes that we got on this one, okay, everybody's leaning still in the same place. That makes sense. And then the final one here, there we go. All right. We used it a bit. We've got one person who's a fanatic. Awesome. That is good. That helps me a little bit. And one person who's never heard of it. Oh, wow. Cool. Welcome to the show. Let me blow your mind. All right. So here we go. I'm going to get that out of the way. And let's talk a little bit about what Monkey Tools is. So a couple things I want to cover off just really quickly here. For those of you who know Monkey Tools, this isn't going to be new to you, but for the person who is new here, then just to give you a little bit of an idea here, the target audience that I have for Monkey Tools, there's actually more than one today. This tool has grown up and become a little bit more than I originally intended it to ever be. So my target audience is generally Excel users who want to save time building Excel solutions, and or they want to build models with Power Query and Power Pivot, and or they need need to audit models received from others. So if you fit into any one of these buckets or more than one of these buckets, you are potentially one of our target users that we're looking for. A couple things that I believe about software, my guiding principles. Number one, do no harm. With one exception, I don't do stuff unless you ask us to. And I'll tell you what that exception is as we go through the presentation here. I'm very much a believer of a positive, permission to do things before we actually go through things, not just doing things behind the scenes. We have one installer, one version. It installs without admin rights. This is important to me as well. We just do not want to have to go and visit IT every time we actually need something to be, installed on our desktop, or every time there's an update. So this will install without admin privileges, and the updates will sort of come automatically as well. One thing I want to make sure that you understand from that, though, is that just because it installs without admin rights doesn't mean if you have policies in your organization that prevent the installation that you should do that, okay? You always want to make sure you're on board with your IT department, but the idea here is that it's supposed to be a lot lower impact than having to call someone for permission. Nobody wants to have to put in a password to install a piece of software. We have high value free features. I'm a community guy. I've been around in the MVP community for a long time. Part of the reason is because of the stuff that I do on my own time. And one of the things I wanted with Monkey Tools was to be able to provide a lot of value to people who didn't necessarily want to pay for it. However, I'm also a software developer. I got to pay the family, and therefore we do sell pro licenses that allow you to do more things and things easier than you might be able to do just strictly under a free license. So we'll talk about what those things are. And if you've got questions around what's free versus pro, by all means, please use the chat window as we go along. I'm watching it over here. I can see what's actually happening there. We also like to learn from user choices. As you are doing things, it drives me crazy in Excel that say I have to keep re-choosing the same choices that I use every time for certain features. So we try to learn from you in a lot of cases to serve you up, based on what you did last time or what might be better. The other thing that's important to know about Monkey Tools, we do not believe in license lock-in. I am not one of those people that wants to go and build a piece of software so that when the first person installs it in your organization, you then have to have everybody else in the organization with a license. That is not the way I work at all. Monkey Tools is targeted at the people that are in the 3 bullet points above. When you build something with Monkey Tools, if you ship that solution to someone else, it will work. I mean, providing you've done the work that you need to do, but there is nothing that will require a hook back to Monkey Tools later. Okay, so this is really, really important to me. One of my primary principles is that I do not want to have license creep in your organization because it's a cause for me. What I want in the organization is I want to know that when it's being installed, it's people that actually want to have it installed. So, cool, Bill. Fair enough. No option in my survey for heard of it, but haven't used it. Fair enough. It's cool. Let's talk about what it does. That's all good. Licensing. I just want to get this elephant out of the room real quick. We install on a named user basis. When you purchase a license, even on the free license, you can install your license for a named user on up to 3 of your computers. Why 3? Because I have a desktop at work, I have a laptop that I travel to, and sometimes I even maybe have another computer in my office as well. So I might want to use it at up to 3 places. Okay, so that's sort of what our general rule of thumb is on this. Is your home desktop, your work desktop, your work laptop, your home computer, because who doesn't do work at home? We have added something, as I mentioned in the What's New in Monkey Tools, an easier way for you to be able to release your licenses so that they're a little bit more portable for yourself. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know and I can call that out as I go through the presentation. The pricing model. We have a forever free. This is our community version, which is, believe it or not, forever free. Comes with updates, all of those good things. As I fix bugs, they're fixed in the forever free version because we only have one installer. Okay. We do have a trial of our pro license. It'll give you full 2 weeks of almost everything in the software. There's one exception to that, which we can talk about a little bit later. And then we also have a pro license subscription. The big thing that you should know about this one, we have options for monthly, for annual, even permanent pro licenses if you want to buy those. And the user can opt in and opt out of the subscription model whenever they like. So if you want to use it for a month and then you want to discontinue your subscription and come back 3 months later, you can absolutely do that. I hope that I can build you software that inspires you to not do that and actually, either go with an annual subscription or a permanent license. Okay, so that's up to me to prove the value to you. Again, full details of this can be found right on the homepage at Monkey Tools. All right, let's talk about features. So when you install Monkey Tools, you get a new ribbon in your Excel instance. And it's wide enough now that I had to break it into two pieces here, but it generally breaks down into a couple of different classifications. We have what I call convenience features. And what a convenience feature is to me is it is a functionality that exists in Excel that I have stolen and put on my own tab. So you can find every one of these commands, except for create query that's highlighted here actually, but you can find most of these commands on regular old Excel tabs. Your get data button is going to be on the data tab. Your manage data model is going to be on your Power Pivot tab. So the concept here is that we're trying to bring all of the commands together so you don't have to flip tabs as much in order to get your job done. This was actually the subject of an Excel feature request from my friend Wynn Hopkins years ago, is please build this one data modeling tab. And I'm like, dude, I already did it. It's called Monkey Tools. Anyway, so there you go. So that's one thing that, just uses standard Excel functionality. Works for everybody, free or pro licenses. The other things that we have on here are obviously Monkey Tools features. And every one of these components is something that I have coded and built in order to hopefully make your life a little bit easier. Within each of the Monkey Tools features, they are broken down into two general groups, monkeys and sleuths. You'll see those words used throughout the software here. What is the difference between a monkey and a sleuth? Well, the sleuths, they're the great detectives. They investigate things. They try and figure out what's happening, give you reports on what might be good or bad or just information around your files and your models. The monkeys, on the other hand, well, we got an army of monkeys that can do stuff to your workbook when you request them to. Okay, so basically monkeys take action, sleuths investigate what's going on and give you reports back as to the health of what is happening inside your workbook. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to show you right now how many monkeys and sleuths we actually have. Okay, so the sleuths are in green, the monkeys are in blue. And at this point in time, I have had to go back and try and actually build a presentation here where I can jump in and out of this presentation to try and figure out which components you guys would actually like to see the most. So I'm going to start with some and just basically I think what we'll do is as I play around today, we'll kind of riff off of you guys and decide which features you want to look at. If there are any specific ones that that you figure are really interesting or important, or you don't know what they do on this list, by all means, drop them into the chat, and I'll make sure that those get covered in a devo. I am going to hit some of the most common ones right off the bat here that I think people should know about, because they are kind of important and change the way or enhance the way the Excel functionality works. So let me just go and pull up my example files so that I can pull them up quickly. And like I say, if there's anything on this list that looks really, really interesting that you definitely want me to explore, let me know. But I'm going to start right off the bat with this guy here from Table Arrange. Okay, so this is a specific monkey that I put in place because it drives me absolutely crazy that the way that Excel did things by default, when you create a table in Excel, you don't get to define your name up front. Okay, so what the From Table Arrange monkey does is it actually replaces the Control T and Control L, get data from table experience. So the reason why we do this is it allows you to define the name of your tables, your named ranges, or your dynamic arrays up front. You can also optionally create a connection-only query during the creation. And a lot of times when I'm actually building queries or building tables, making them, the whole point is to pull them into Power Query. This allows you to name it before creating the query. And this is the really, really important thing here, is that if you actually go and you take a look, let me just make sure I've got one default configured correctly here before I go and actually pull this on. Perfect. Okay. So if I go here and I grab a set of data, okay, and I press Control T, this is the default Excel experience. It says, hey, great, where is the data for your table? And at this point, when we go and say okay, you'll notice that it gives us a table called Table 1. Now, the challenge with this is that we get no chance to change it. And if you do something like this, where you go right click and say get data from table or range, it doesn't prompt you to name the table. It creates a Power Query based on table 1 or table 2, whatever the definition is. And then when you come back and you do the healthy thing in your workbook, which is change the table name to something more logical like sales, at that point, all of your Power Queries that rely on that table break. And that's not cool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go and say, all right, I'm going to throw this workbook away here. I want to start over on this one. Okay. Pop this guy back open. And I'm going to show you the way that our experience actually works here. Okay, so right off the bat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click inside this one. I'm going to press Control-T, and what you'll see is that this brings up the Monkey Tools Create Table of Named Range. This, by the way, is a free feature. Okay, this is available to absolutely everybody that's here. You'll notice that I can go and I can rename this right now. I can call it Sales, and if I want to, I can go and create a connection-only query. If I hit OK on this one, what we'll see is that it takes a little bit longer than your standard table because it's creating the Power Query for you right off the bat. We now have our sales query that points back to the sales table. Okay. So this is our tabular sales data here. We've got some tabular budget data over here. If I hit Control-T on this case here, I'm going to go call this one budgets. How about budget? I don't really need to do anything else at this point in time. If I go and hit OK, it'll just create it. Okay, so this is another thing that we actually tried to do with this is we've tried to pick up the keyboard shortcuts to allow you to move through these dialogues as quickly as possible. As soon as you go in there and say Control-T, it puts you right in the name box. The name is highlighted. You can just type the name, hit enter, and boom, you're done. You've got it. If you don't need the connection-only query. Now, one of the things that's kind of interesting about this, though, is that when we go and we start to play with some of these other components, in the Excel dialog, this will not recognize that your table has headers because everything is text-based. Mine is smarter than that, so it actually picks that up as well. Okay. Did I remove the table range DIN prefix from Monkey Tools? No, I did not do that. And actually, that's a fair question on this one here. We'll come back to that one. But let's say, you know what? Why not? Why don't we go and just take a look at this one here? I'll walk through those kind of things, Stanton, along the way here. So in this case here, I'm just going to go and call this one tabular. Okay, so. Here we go. You'll notice this to say it has headers, and that's the important thing that I want to recognize in this particular case. When I come up with tabular data with no headers here, so these are text headers, these ones have no headers, it's all numeric. When I hit Control-T on this, you'll notice that this one says, hey, it looks like your table doesn't have headers. So we've actually changed this up. This is exactly opposite what Microsoft does. Microsoft will look at it and actually give you headers where you don't want them, and it won't recognize headers where you do. So we said, hey, let's change it up. So this is going to be, let's call this one just numeric. Okay. And my data doesn't have headers, so when I click OK, you'll notice that it actually puts the column headers in there. All right, now, let me show you ranges as well. So in this case here, I've got a nice big range of data. I don't want this as a table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to press Control-T. You'll notice it brings up the same dialog, but over here, we've got our named range. Okay, so we could still create a table if we wanted. We could just flip this dialog, but you'll notice that it has prefaced this with RNG here, provide the name for the range. If I want to use that, I can just press end and press statement, and it will let me do so. It tells me where's the data. And again, if I want to create a connection-only query, I can do that. This will create the named range as well as create the connection-only query that I can then go and use to deal with it. Okay. Now, one of the things that Stanton was asking in this is about prefacing different names and things like that as well. So I should probably talk about that really quick because there are some different options that we actually have for our data. So let me go and just grab this data right here, Control-C, we'll go Control-Shift-V and paste it down here. What if I always want a table prefaced with TBL? Maybe I've got an IT background, that's where I want to live. Under Monkey Tools, under the Options monkey, we actually have an option under our global options here. You'll notice here I have a use default Control-L shortcut. This is how I can demo the original table dialog. When I told you originally that I pressed Control-T, I actually pressed Control-L. That brings up the original Excel name dialog. Control-T brings me the one that I want. You'll notice I can include a table name preface. So if I say, hey, look, I want every table name to be prefaced with TBL, when I go and say OK now, Control T, it now, and this again, this is one of those things that I've really tried to work on here. Notice that TBL is not highlighted, but the one is. So I can now go and call this TBL categories. All I need to do is start typing the part that I actually want and say OK, and boom, it's done. We now have our table called TBL categories. So I haven't removed those at all, Stanton. They're still there. The big key thing on this one is, like the default experience when you're naming a table in Excel, it will give you the name table 1, table 2, table 3. I highlight that so you can just overtype it. When you're doing a named range, I actually do have the name as RNG something, but we've highlighted that so you can overtype it and replace it. Okay, if you did want everything prefaced with the named range and you'd prefer that it's not highlighting RNG, you'd type RNG into your preface, and then it would actually say, okay, we're going to put a 1 at the end, and it'll highlight that so you can actually start typing that instead. So it's all about saving every single keystroke that I can in this particular case. Finally, over here, we've got dynamic arrays. So again, if I hit Control T on these, you'll notice this one has come up and it said, okay, cool. This looks like a table. Fair enough. We're going to call this one. Notice I've given it a table preface here. So I'm just going to call this table source. We're going to say, okay, it does some stuff there. This one is a dynamic array though, and it's picking up from our table. We've got some block data here. I can go and actually show it really is a dynamic array. And if I press Control T on this, you'll notice it picks up the area for the dynamic array, marks a name of ARY, but it's highlighted because I haven't put in a specific preface. So I could go and call this one sales array. I could create a connection only query. And at this point in time, there is my sales array that is actually pulling from the dynamic array. So we've picked those kind of things up as well. Dynamic array 2, I should probably show you the one other component from this that makes this really important. Every bit of this table dialog works for just pressing Control T, but it also works in this scenario. In the case of sales array, when I press Control T, and I'm going to do that here, I chose to create a connection only query. What this does, it brings it in, creates the query, sets the data types. It loads it as connection only. So I have to double click on it to edit it. If I right click and choose get data from table or range, the default experience for Microsoft is to name the table 1 or a dynamic array or dynamic array 1, pull you into Power Query and build your query that way. But in this case, you'll notice we interrupt that process with this one here. So I'm going to call this one array 2. I'm going to say OK. And what you'll notice, or you would if I had Power Query showing up on the right monitor, is it actually pops open the Power Query editor. At this point in time, if I discard this, the Power Query will not be created, but this now allows me to go and do more things. Okay, so the nice thing is we interrupt both of these processes. If you don't want that for any reason, though, you can always go back to the global options, check the boxes to use the default experiences, and you don't have to worry about those kind of things. Okay, now, let me show you, well, actually, I'm going to just change one box here, and I'm going to drop out of this example. We'll get rid of it. And I'll just roll out the rest of this one here. So again, this is fully functional and free license. This is one of those very, very few instances where we actually change the default behavior of Excel. Everything else is usually an on-demand kind of thing with one other exception, which I'll show you next. But the big key here is that I really believe that this is something that Microsoft should have done by default, and that's why I've released this to all users. It's fully functional and free license, complete with configurable defaults to use the Excel behavior if you want to do so. Okay. Now, you can also turn on your connection only by default as well if you really want to have that. I started that way, but I found that it actually made things a little bit too slow for me on a regular basis. So I said, you know what, I'm going to turn that off by default. I'll choose it when I want it. Anyhow, let me go back here, and I want to show you another really important one, because this again is one that changes the default behavior of Excel, and it is the rename table monkey. And this is one that was new earlier on this year. Basically, what the issue is, I've already sort of alluded to this one, is that renaming a table doesn't update dependent Power Queries. This drives me crazy. This kills Excel's get data from table functionality, which is why I built a dialog that we had beforehand. Now, that's great if you're creating a new query, but what if later on, for some reason, you decide to change the name of your query? What's going to happen? well, it blows up. So how our monkeys help with this one here? When you rename a table, our monkeys automatically update all related Power Queries for you so that those queries don't break. Okay. Now, just be aware a pro license is required for this feature. This is not functional in the free license. This is one of those ones where I said, you know, this is a cool feature. I think that that you can help out with our development funding for this one. Okay. You can also disable it in the options monkey as well. You just choose the checkbox to use the default edit table name experience. But let me just show you really quickly here what this one looks like. So I'll just open up a little demo on this guy here too. Here we go. So in this particular model right now, let me just go to Monkey Tools and show the query connection pane. I think this is on the data tab. I forget because I use my software enough right now. But what you'll notice is if I go to the sales table, this one's called table 1. My budget is called table 2. Those are terrible names for tables. I really want this one to be called sales and this one to be called budget. The problem is when I go and choose and put in sales here, and I go to take a look at my sales query, it comes back with an error. Let's go and take a look at why. It says we couldn't find table 1 because the Power Query is pointed to table 1, just like budgets is pointed to table 2. Okay, so this is not ideal, right? This is the default behavior that you would see. So let me just change this back, table 1. And now I'm going to go and unflag that setting that I just set in the last section here under global options. We're going to uncheck the default edit table name experience. Instead, we're going to go with the way that Monkey Tools works for a pro license holder. On table design, I'm going to go and call this one sales. And when we go and we take a look at the sales query, it now works. When I go over to budget, and I rename this one to budget, let's go edit it. Y'all saw beforehand that this said table 2, it now says budget. This one said table 1 before, it now says sales. Again, another feature that Excel honestly should have put in place here, but they didn't. So we've added that in to a pro user license. You don't have to do anything special to it. As long as you've got your pro license activated, it automatically takes care of these things when you're renaming tables. So you don't need Monkey Tools open to do that. Well, you need Monkey Tools installed. Yeah, absolutely. But you don't have to open the queries and connections pane for it. No, it just works, right? It's silent behind the scenes. When you rename a table, what it automatically does is it goes and it scans all of the Power Queries that are in the workbook and says, hey, I found that table name in here. Let's replace it. And there you go. Okay, so just works silently behind the scenes. You'll never even see that monkey. He hides in the bushes and just does the work. Okay, so it's kind of nice. All right, so that is our rename table monkey. You know, an underappreciated monkey, and yet does such hard stuff for us, right? So, okay. Now, you can see why it can easily take me 5 hours to get through all of the stuff that I actually have inside this software. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hop into another one that can help all users, not just modeling users and whatnot. That's going to be the BiblioMonkey. This feature started as a, well, let's just say that it grew up into a lot more than I ever expected it would. So basically what the BiblioMonkey is about is it is a personalized library where you can store your own queries, measures, formulas, lambdas, VBA, and Office scripts in one handy place. I've met a lot of users who like to store all of these kind of things in a collection of text files, and then they're trying to, you know, find the text file, find the right line for it, copy and paste it when they're working across multiple workbooks. It's not very dynamic. It doesn't really work very well. So I thought, man, there must be a better way. And that's what this actually came up with. In addition to it, what this allowed us to do is it allowed us to provide context-sensitive variable replacement tagging. You're like, what is that? What it means is when you store your query, your measure, your formula, your lambda, what it means is you can actually select a component inside those things and you can tag it with something to prompt you for replacement at injection time. Okay, we do not do this for VBA and scripts, okay? But the big key thing here is that everything gets stored in your own personal database. Everything that's gone in there is something that you added, so it means something to you. And if you want to sync your database across multiple computers, you just throw it in a OneDrive folder and point it there. And at that point, as soon as you've saved it, when you open it up on the new machine, it'll sync down. You've got your entire database in one place. Items can then be inserted into workbooks on demand. Variable tags or prompt you for contextual replacement. I'll show you how this works here. The one big thing here, the behavior copy versus inject is based on both the item and the license type. What this means is we allow you to inject items automatically from a variety of different places if you're on a pro license. If you are on a free license, we'll still prompt you for the replacements, but we put it into your paste buffer, so you then need to go and paste it in the right place, okay? We're still giving you the functionality, we're just making it a ton easier for our pro users. So what does this mean? Well, let me just show you. All right, I'm going to open up a BiblioMonkey, formulas and lambdas. Okay, so we have a little bit of a problem in this particular workbook. I've got a bunch of divide by zero errors here. Now, oh, one of the biggest time savers, cool, there you go. So here's something cool, right? So this has got a rounding formula in it, but it divides by zero. So what I really need to do with this is I really need to either come back and say, well, if R8 equals 0, then do this, otherwise do that, or I want to wrap this in an if error statement. Now I know the best way, we're going to wrap it in if error anyway. The important thing to realize though is that these formulas, while they are consistent in these ones, notice this one flips to a subtotal. I still want to wrap this in an if error statement too. This one is another subtotal. These ones are individual rounding functions, another subtotal here and a completely different, oh, that's just a straight out subtraction. So a bunch of different formats for this. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this works first, and then we'll talk about what's going on behind the scenes. Is if I right click on one of these formulas and choose to insert from BiblioMonkey, I have a formula for an error handler, and I'm going to put in if error 0. And what you'll see is that every one of these has now become 0. But if you look at the formula that's actually here, you'll notice that we actually wrapped it in if error comma 0. The important part, the subtotal got wrapped in if error 0. So did this one. This is a rounding function. And there's our S1 minus S26, okay? So this is a really, really cool time saver. If you build yourselves these patterns, especially for things you use frequently, this can actually save you a ton of effort when you're trying to actually go and fix things. I mean, you know, if I look at these guys and say, well, geez, I want to do the same thing for all of these totals, right click, insert from BiblioMonkey, formula, error handler, if error 0. Now I've got 0 protection on all of my cross totals as well, just like that, okay? I'm going to show you one more, and then we'll talk about what the actual BiblioMonkey itself looks like. So in this area, I have a particular formula that I like to use. What I'm building here is I'm building something that says, I would like you to take my 2022 units sold. I would like you to increase that by my forecasted global increase of 5%. However, if this value here is not blank, I'd like you to use that instead of the 5%. There's a formula for this. I've had to write this a lot because I've done a lot of schedules like this in my life. I hate writing this formula because I always have to remember how it works. So say, let's do this. Insert from BiblioMonkey formula. We're going to use volume forecast with override. And inside here, it pops up to say, where do you want to apply it to? Well, it's already picked up the range I've selected. Where is the global percentage increase? It's right here, 5%. Where is the monthly override? Notice that this one's absolute, this one's fully relative. The override is here. Where's the monthly volume? It's here, also fully relative. So all I need to do is pick everything relative to the cell that I started from. And now when I say inject, it injects the formula all the way across, and you'll see that the formula itself is actually a let function that I built myself. Okay, so there's the first cell that we picked off, and these are all the rest. Okay, I don't want to have to remember to write this formula every single time. So now the question is, well, how the heck did I actually do this? Well, the short answer is I had to write it once, right? I had to go through and create this formula the first time. And then what I did is I said, let's go copy this. Copy it. There we go. I'm now going to go to Monkey Tools, and I'm going to pop open the BiblioMonkey. The BiblioMonkey is a database browser that looks like this, and you can see that we've got a formula section here. Here is the volume forecast with override formula. So it looks quite similar to what I had before. I'm just going to go and paste this to the bottom. You can sort of see what's going on, right? So the same formula that I copied from my cells is going in here, but what you'll notice is that in this case, I've got this funky looking tag here, PCA1 and global percentage increase. instead of what I've got in this area here. So how do I go about getting this guy here? Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and copy something real quick here. I'm going to copy that one, Control C. I'm going to go and copy this one, Control C, and I'm going to go and copy this one here, Control C. All right, now let me get rid of all these guys here. So here's how I tag a formula. We find the absolute cell reference. Right click, add new prompt. I want a cell reference, fully absolute. And it says, what do you want for the prompt for this section? I'm going to use enter percentage, global percentage increase. It puts the tag in there for me. I then come and find this one here. This one here is fully relative that I want. So I'm going to prompt for a cell reference, fully relative. The description I copied was the enter monthly override percentage. I would normally type this, obviously. And then for the last one, I'm going to grab this one here, add new prompt, this one again, fully relative. And let's just paste in the enter monthly override. And at that point, I'm going to hit update or save. It's now written to the database. If I now go and use it, these prompts are specific to what I said I wanted to see. So when I go to inject it inside my workbook, it pops up with that prompt, and there we go. We pick the cells and drop them in place. So it's kind of a cool little function here that can really allow you to do some cool time-saving techniques along the way here for formulas that you use often, especially if they're complicated, right? So I'm going to show you another example of this as well, because BiblioMonkey is good with formulas. It's also good with some other stuff. So let me just close this one here. And I'm going to open up a different file, which is called BiblioMonkey model. So BiblioMonkey model holds a power pivot model. We go to Monkey Tools, show queries and connections. So you can see we got a lot of power queries that are showing up in this area. If I go to manage data model, we can see that we've got a bunch of tables in the data model. We've got our diagram view. Here's the relationship schema, some measures that are on there. Everything looks good so far. But here's the thing. A couple of things that I want to do to this workbook. One of them is I want to deal with this name error. I got a little formula in here that says equals worksheet name. Well, the problem is the reason it's giving me a name error is because worksheet name is supposed to be targeting a Lambda function. Now, I'm not really a big writer of Lambda functions, but I have managed to scoop just enough from my friends so that they wrote them and I can put them into my own database. So here's what I'm going to do is I've got a Lambda function to return the worksheet name. So I'm going to go right click. Doesn't even have to be on the cell for reference because Lambdas are global scoped. Here's a Lambda. Here's my Lambda worksheet name function. I'm just going to get rid of that L underscore. I'm going to say worksheet name, inject, and you can see this now returns sales versus budget. There it is down the bottom. Where does that come from? Well, under the name manager, here is the Lambda function that has been injected. And I hate to say it because these things are just, it's a terrible little dialogue to work with. It's actually easier, believe it or not, to review it in BiblioMonkey once it's stored there. So let's go take a look. Here is the L worksheet name. This is the Lambda function that I actually use here. And basically what it's doing in this particular case here is it's just injecting this into the workbook, okay? Now, I actually just realized I didn't show you one of the patterns that I probably should have as well. This if error 0, by the way. I wrote my if error function, and then in place of everything that was in the cell, I put in this tag. Okay, and this tag is basically an add new prompt, cell contents. So basically what happens at that point in time is it reads the formula from the cell, wraps it in whatever the function is that I put in place, returns it to the cell. And that's why it worked for all of those different formulas as well. Okay, so anyhow, so you now see Lambda functions. I've got a few different ones for file path and file name and text between, which doesn't exist in Excel. Why they created text before, text after, and not text between, I'll never know, but there you go. So a few of them that I've actually picked up, as well as some other ones from some friends that I do or don't use all that often. Now, I'm going to show you what I want to inject into this workbook now, because I have sales, I have budget, but I want to inject another DAX measure. And I happen to have a pattern over here for month to date, X months prior. Now, something cool about this is that this is brand new as of about 2 weeks ago. is that we now indent and colorize your DAX inside BiblioMonkey. This did not happen prior to this, okay? I just wrote a full new DAX indenter that is actually plugged into Monkey Tools throughout. So you can see that it's color highlighted here. We've actually got our tags are highlighted in orange. Our variables and keywords are all highlighted as well. So some kind of neat things that you can see in place here. You will notice that my other things, like when I'm working with my Get Calendar, it doesn't. I do see on some of these things, if I go to indent them, it does work. I'm working on the Power Query stuff slowly but surely, so eventually that will come. But I'm not indenting Power Query by default as well by now, or at this point in time. I'm also not indenting Excel formulas. Each one of these needs its own complete tokenizer and part for written. I started with DAX. At any rate, I want this one here. You'll notice there's a bunch of stuff that's been tagged. Okay, we've got a value. Okay, the number of months to subtract. We have a this is a qualified column. Okay, so what I want to show you here is that when we're working with Power Pivot, you can insert text and values. You can insert a measure name, tables from a variety of different classifications, qualified columns, or unqualified columns, specific columns for calendars, primary keys, foreign keys. All of these will reduce the list down to show you just the ones you want. Each one allows you to put in your own description. And one of the cool things about this one that you can actually see here is that this particular tag, enter date column, is used down here again. And here, actually, it's used in 3 places. And we do this by saying, I'm going to tag the first one. And then when I go and select the next area, I go and say right click, use existing prompt, and it actually chooses the same prompts that I've got before. Why this is super cool? If I go to my pivot table, now unfortunately on a pivot table, the insert is way down the bottom, but if I insert a measure, time intelligence pattern, month to date, X prior or months prior, this pops up the dialog. So I can say month to date, prior month. Can't type. I'm going to store this one here on my sales table. I'm going to subtract 1 month. My primary date key column is calendar date. What's important to realize here is that this only shows the primary key for the calendar, even though there's lots of other columns in the model, because that's the type of column that I chose that I wanted. This only gives me measures, so it gives me all of the measures that I have available to me. So I'm just going to go and pick up my sales dollars here, and when I inject this, it will automatically add it and put it into the pivot table. And the important thing to realize about this, let me just sort of sneak peek with our DAX sleuth, is that when I go to take a look at it, why did you not show up on that one? Silly thing. Hang on a second, connect to the active workbook. Thank you. When I go and take a look at my, hang on a second, maybe it was there. I just didn't know what I'm looking for. Here is the formatted DAX measure. There's the 1. Here's the calendar date column that went in 1, 2, 3 times. There's the measure that I chose. And it's stored on the sales table that I chose as well. So all of these things allow me to build some complex patterns, particularly for time intelligence, and inject them when I actually need them. So it's kind of a neat little thing here. We also, of course, have the ability to insert from here as well. We can use Power Query. So if I wanted to go and say, insert a loaded pencil query for, let's say this one here, annualized location sales summary. This one comes back and we'll do 2013 tax evader is the division that I have here. I'm going to load it to connection only, so I'll make it 2013. We'll make our location tax evader. This is just text. I don't have the ability to validate from an external SQL database. But what you'll see here is that we've got our new query is being created down here. We'll see if it actually prompts me to log into the database server or not. Let me just go there and see. Oh, I'm in the wrong accounts. There we go. Anyway, the important thing to realize about this is that the query that was created and injected is right here, and it's actually put in the values. 2013 is here, and tax evader is here. I didn't realize I was logged in with the wrong account today, but there we go. So you can inject your Power Queries, you can inject your DAX, you can inject your Lambda functions, your Excel functions as well. The big difference for a non-pro user is that the inject button for these, where we inject right in here, becomes copy. Okay, like you see, for example, with VBA, it's copy. I don't have the ability to inject VBA directly or Office scripts, but we do. This is kind of neat. Have the ability to inject something like Python. So inject Python, let's put in a bullet chart, and here you go, almost. We've got a bullet chart built in Python. So as long as you know where you write your Python formulas, you can actually do this as well. And there are some contextual tabs or tags that are available for Python as well that you can actually use in your stuff as well. So it's a real good time-saving feature for a lot of people. So just be aware of that one if you haven't used it before. And so far, like honestly, I really haven't talked about data modeling or anything like that, which to be fair was actually the primary use case for what Monkey Tools was back in the day. So you know it's changed quite a bit. Let me just go back here. All right. I want to show probably two more things here. Most of you mentioned that you were working with Power Query, so I do want to show this one here called Time Sleuth. We'll take a look at Query Sleuth as well in the process. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a general modeling demo afterwards as well. But if there's anything else, again, that you see on this list that you're thinking, man, what is that? I got to know, you know, by all means, you know, share that with me along the way here too. So let's look at Time Sleuth to go and take a look at this one. So basically what the concept is behind Time Sleuth is a timer for your Power Queries. It times the refresh time for Power Queries. Unfortunately, I cannot do this in Power BI. It needs Excel because I need to be able to load it somewhere and I need VBA to do it. But basically what we can do is we can time your refresh all operation and we can time specific queries as well. We can also chart comparisons for it as well, which allows us to build charts like this to try and figure out, you know, which of these different components is actually running faster. Yeah, Bill, there is, we'll have a chart that identifies which feature in the free, which require a license. Yeah, there is a document that you can find online that does have a feature comparison in it. It is, I'm going to say mostly up to date, but not 100% up to date. But yes, there is a document there for it for sure. All right. What can we do with charting comparisons? Well, with this, we can actually run multiple trials across our Power Queries to see which refresh faster. So there's a bunch of different ways that you might want to look at these things to kind of tell what's going on. I'll show you some examples of these things. Like this is one of the big models that I wrote. You know, right off the bat, you can probably guess which of the queries was actually killing my refresh time when I was refreshing my entire model. And this is actually what I wrote the tool to try and figure out originally, was which query is killing me. It's obviously forecast in this place. It was taking 40 seconds on average to refresh just the forecast query. Everything else was less than 5. But when you start adding all of those up, it's really, really hard to tell. This was me testing when I wrote a user interface driven way to label duplicates. This is refresh times in seconds here. You can see that mine are really, really quick. A user came and gave me a custom function. They built an M. Just threw the comments right into my chat with no preface whatsoever. I'm like, what's this all about? Their performance was terrible compared. So this is one of those first sort of areas where you start figuring out, hey, just because you can write M doesn't mean that you actually are doing things better than what you can do through the user interface, even though it takes 10 times as many steps. This one here is connecting to SharePoint contents versus SharePoint.files. I need to update that graphic because that one actually isn't really indicative of the things that you would normally see here. I discovered why that was a problem later on, but that's kind of an interesting component as well as some of the different things we can do. So let me show you an example of how this one works, because I think it's always interesting to see Time Sleuth in practice. This is a pro feature, just for reference. So basically let me give you a quick concept of what we're actually dealing with on this one here. So if I go and take a look at Monkey Tools, I'm going to pull up my Query Sleuth. So the Query Sleuth is essentially a dependency tracer for your Power Queries. So if I go and take a look at UI-driven DM and I expand this, you'll notice that it comes from data and a lookup table. These are both highlighted in yellow. These are the child queries that we have. Okay, so not a ton of stuff going on in these, and honestly, data and lookup table are used all over the place. We also have a custom function here called PQB lookup. We've got another UI-driven query and an unbuffered query. Okay, now the main thing that I want to show you here is the difference in some of these. This one loads to the data model. This one loads to the worksheet. That's the only difference between these two queries, is their load destination. As far as buffered and unbuffered, these are the ones that I'm going to focus on right now. So I'm going to collapse the rest of these down. The buffered query looks like this. Oops, sorry, buffered is here. It says table.buffer lookup table. The unbuffered query just says lookup table. This is the only difference between these two queries. One is buffered and one is not. And if you've worked with Power Query, you might be curious about the whole mysterious thing around table.buffer. Basically what it does, it reads things into memory. So instead of going and re-executing the lookup table multiple times, we're reading it into memory once and storing it. This buffered and unbuffered solution was written up with the PQV lookup function, which I'm showing you here, in M is for Data Monkey, the original book that I published here, in order to try and replicate VLOOKUP approximate match in Power Query because it doesn't have one. One of my buddies came up with a new way to do this, which was referred to as UI driven, which looks a little bit longer. You do all this through the user interface. You don't have to write a single line of code. So when this happened, I was like, man, I got to see which one of these performs better. So what I did is I cracked open the time sleuth. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run buffered, unbuffered, and UI driven. Each of these loads to worksheets. I don't want to actually pollute it with these guys here. I'm also going to chart the variation. We're just going to do 5 trials, and I'm not going to double the trials right now to compare privacy. This will allow you to actually do refreshes with privacy on and privacy off to see just how bad the effect of privacy is slowing down your data. What I'm going to do at this point with these 3 queries selected is I'm going to run what's called the detailed refresh. And what this will do is it will now start going and running refreshes against the actual data to see how long these things are going to take. Okay. The key things about this, we can only time queries that load to a destination. Okay. They must go to either the worksheet, the data model, or both. We cannot time connection only queries because connection only queries don't load anywhere. So there's really nothing that we can actually look at. Okay. Now, the way this works is it will run a refresh, and it says this one here on trial 1, instance number 2, we have run our first query was 0.88 seconds. The second one was 0.28 seconds. The next one was 8.01 seconds. And we give you a cumulative total for the total run down here. So we can see that, we got a 0.89, we got a 0.92. This one's gone from 0.28, 0.3 to 2.53 and a 13.4. There's a lot to understand around Power Query refreshes, but the main component is that at the end of this, we kick out a little chart that looks like this. This is a box and whisker chart. The X is the average refresh time. On the top, the whiskers are showing everything from above here or here above is the 75th quartile of refresh times in this particular case. But the main thing that you're looking for here is you want your box to be as low as possible, close to the axis, right? That indicates less time. And you also want the box to be short because that indicates there's not a lot of variation. The things that can introduce variation into this, number 1, Power Query. Number 2, the other running process on your systems. If you want terrible performance, refresh your Power Queries when you're trying to lead a presentation over Teams. It's terrible for that, impacts it all the time. Okay, so it's just kind of a neat little feature there that can help you get an idea as to what's going on. It's not perfect, but it does give you an idea. Like I say, in this case, the user interface driven query is by far the best, even over a buffered version of a hard-coded M code query in this case. Unbuffered, you certainly don't want to use. Okay, so that's our time sleuth. It's also a quick look at our query sleuth and how you can actually sort of see some of the different components in here. These colors, by the way, do mean something. There is a legend that actually explains those things. I just tend to run with it off. There's also a few other tricks if you take the Learning Monkey Tools course on Skillwave that you can learn that you can do with this as well. So that is our time sleuth. All right, I'm going to run through one more demo that works through data modeling that shows a wide variety of the different components for the data modeling side of things. And then we'll probably wrap it up for today unless there's other questions along the way. So let me hop into a modeling demo. Basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a look at how to build a model. We're going to use a couple of query monkeys, table monkey, calendar monkey. We're going to use our multi-measure monkey, the biblio monkey as well, and then we'll examine the monkey with, examine the model with query sleuth, DAX sleuth, and our model sleuth as well. This has a mixture of free and pro features in it, just be aware, but I'll call out sort of where those are as we go through. All right, so let's start off on this one here. Actually, I'm going to start from a blank workbook. Well, not totally blank, but close to blank. I'm going to use a really, really simple model here. This one's just called simple base no queries. It looks like so, and I just realized that I have actually intended to be dealing with a completely different file here. So let me just delete these and save them back to the state that it's supposed to be in. That is better. All right, so we've got 3 tables, okay? We've got sales, we've got budget, and we got categories. I want to pull all 3 of these into my data model, and I've just realized that Excel has crashed on me to a degree. My Monkey Tools tab is gone. Let me just check something really quickly here, and then we'll start this process again. Come on. And when you work with Power Pivot, things go sideways. I was waiting for somebody to ask me that, Melinda. So how do I get the row and column highlighted based on the cell that I click in? Well, here's the thing. I'm on the beta program with Excel, and on the beta program with Excel on the View tab, we have a new setting here called Focus Cell, and Focus Cell allows you to even change your cell color if you want it to be yellow or whatever else, so that you can actually choose, so you can see where your intersection actually is. This is what it is. And indeed, Stanton, yes, what is a demo without something crashing on you first, right? Okay, let me try this again. So we're going to go back to our simple base no queries. There we go. Monkey Tools tab is happily showing up. That's excellent. How long before mere mortals get that feature? Good question. It depends on how stable it is. I haven't heard anything on it from Microsoft. It just showed up one day, so I wish I could tell you, but I'd be sworn to secrecy even if I knew. So it will come one day, as long as you're on Office 365. So no worries, David. The rest of the demo will be online within 24 to 48 hours. And as also check out that course on Skillwave to find out a ton more that I don't have time to cover today. So, all right, let me go build a quick data model here. So I want to pull these 3 tables into our data model. You'll notice right now that we do not have any queries inside this workbook whatsoever. So I'm going to use a pro feature here called Table Monkey. Here's one of the things to realize around what's going on in this particular case is that basically everything up to this query here, all of these are available for free. Everything from Smart File Monkey down are on a pro license. Interestingly enough, with these 2, you can do all of it with these guys. You just have to hook the pieces together manually, and you can follow the instructions to do so. We just make your life a lot easier in this particular case. Now, I'm not going to demo those guys today, but that's basically the dividing line is halfway between these. What does Table Monkey do on the pro license? Table Monkey examines all of the tables in the workbook and says, would you like to pull them into Power Pivot? You will notice that you can click on the table and it will go and actually select the tables for you. And if we take a look at the table design tab, you'll notice that this is the categories table here. This is budget. This is sales. I'm not happy with this table name, so I'm just going to right click on it right now, and I'm going to put an S on the end for budgets. And when I say OK, if I click away and come back, you'll notice that it is now updated. It is showing me as budgets. These guys here indicate our extract, transform, and load queries. Okay, this is the model settings that I use when I teach people how to do this in our boot camps and academies. And if I hit create right now, what will happen is this will create our 3 raw data queries. It will link the 3 staging queries to those, and then it grabs my 3 data model tables and loads them into the data model. That took what, couple seconds? Try and do this manually, it's going to take you at least 20 seconds to go through and do the process. And here are all of the tables inside the data model ready to go. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to go and link my categories and category in this particular case here. Come on. And I'm going to hide these guys because I don't need to see them here. Okay. Now, the next component is that I need a calendar. Now, there's a recipe for a calendar table, but I like this one better. If I hit Calendar Monkey, it's going to go through, doing a little bit of analysis on the workbook, and then it pops up this guy here to allow me to go through and say, all right, what kind of calendar do you want? 12-month, 445, 454. I'm going to go 12-month. What year end do you have? Well, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to choose that I have a September 30th year end just for fun. I'm going to load it to the data model. We'll call it calendar. I want to grab my data. My earliest date ever is going to be from staging sales. My latest date ever is going to be staging budgets. I'm going to hit next. These are the different columns that it offers me by default. Okay, so I'm going to grab those. We'll say next. going to add relationships to my sales and budgets. I'm going to hit create. And at this point, it creates me a couple of staging queries for start date and end date, and then loads a calendar to the data model. It also gives a little bit of advice down the bottom here on some things you need to do, because unfortunately, there's no APIs for me to do these parts for you. But basically what it says is hide this, and then if there's any columns that you actually need to sort inside here, you're going to need to set those sorts up manually. Let me just go and hide these things too, by the way. Hide, go. If I go back to data model now, if I go to my calendar table, I could say, hey, you know what, my month short, I'm going to go and sort this column here by, and I don't know that I actually have a month of year column, so I can't sort it because month of fiscal year is not going to work, but it doesn't matter. I'm not super worried about that. We'll go with our month ends instead. So we've now created and spun up a nice little data model. We do need one more thing though. We do need some measures. So I'm going to go to my measure monkey. I'm going to grab my multiple explicit measures, which pops open this little dialog here. I'm going to hit next. And it says, all right, we've identified that you have a fact table called budgets and a fact table called sales. These are the ones that have the many relationships all the way around them, but no one relationships. We have a name conflict here. This is the first one is shown in blue. The second one is in red. I'm going to go and call this one budget dollars. I'm going to call this one sales dollars. I'm going to set these both to a currency format with no decimals. There we go. And I think just for fun, I'm going to add another aggregation here. This one is going to point to not the amount, category, or date columns, but rather the name of the table itself, sales. The only thing I can do here is count it, but I'm going to give this one a name of transactions. I'm going to say create, 3 measures created for me. Nice and easy. So now what I can do is I can go to my pivots and filters from data model, insert a new pivot table on my worksheet. You'll notice here are my sales. Well, let's put transactions before sales. There we go. Here's my budgets. I can now go and say, let's put our fiscal year on rows. Bingo, there we go. And if I want to break my category class across the top of columns, I've now got, I don't like that. Let's put it down here instead. There we go. We've now got a nice little pivot table showing me my transaction, sales, and budget. So really, really quick to go and build some of these things up. Again, if I want to now go and insert something like a month-to-date measure or a year-to-date measure or something else, I can easily do that by inserting something from BiblioMonkey. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually build a new BiblioMonkey formula for you guys right now, because there's one that I want to get in here. Why don't I have it prompt for a pivot table name? Great question, Melinda. I should absolutely do that. The main reason that I didn't have it prompt for a pivot table name is because on the pivots and filters menu, this button, I actually stole this one from Excel and they don't. So I could rewrite it. It just takes time. Okay, so, but it's a great question and it's definitely something that I should do. All right, let me go back in here. I'm gonna go and write myself a new DAX measure. So we're gonna go add new. I'm gonna choose a measure, and this one here is going to be a variance measure. Okay, I'm gonna call this one variance. And basically what the variance is going to be in this case is we're basically gonna go and say, all right, well, it's gonna be equals, and we're gonna say add new prompt. We're gonna choose a measure, select your budget minus another measure, select your actual, say okay to that, that's perfect. We're going to make this a currency. We're going to go with no decimal places, no symbol. You just get those ones off there. You can hit save. Bingo. It's nicely indented. That looks great. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back over into Excel here. We're going to go right click, insert from our BiblioMonkey, a new measure. We're going to use our variance, and it will pop up and says, what do you want to call this one? I'm going to call this variance dollars. Cannot spell today. We're going to store this one on the sales table. That will work. My budget measure that I'm going to go with is going to be budget. My sales measure is going to be sales dollars. And when I inject it, unable to, oh, perfect. All right, I guys obviously got a bug. This is why you don't try these things live when you're doing it. But you know, once I work out why I have a bug, that will actually work out quite nicely. Just curious. Nope, the equals should be fine. All right, look at that. One more bug to go through thing. Never go off script, Ken. Never go off script. Proof that I'm only human, maybe, or my monkey is. Anyhow, a true demo. Hey, look, I'm all about rolling the dice and going crazy with these things, right? So let's take a look at some of the other things that you can do here. I had promised that we were going to look at a couple of different features. So one of these is the DAX sleuth. So the DAX sleuth is similar to the query sleuth. It gives you the ability to go in and take a look at your formulas and see what's going on in this thing. These aren't obviously very complex, so there's not really much point in trying to indent or unindent them. But let me go and insert one of the other measures here, because I do. No, I'm not going to bother with that, only because I want to show you some cool features on this one too that actually just came out. So I didn't mention this with the BiblioMonkey. I was hoping to save it for the DAX side of things, but one of the things that we've added in recently is our new DAX indenter. We also have the ability to customize the way your DAX comes out. So in the case of something like an expected dollars measure here, this is obviously a fairly big measure. If I want to suppress the colors, I can do that. If I press Control I, it'll re-indent. So there we go, colors are gone. Maybe I don't want to see indentation. Let me get this on a different one here. Yeah, here we go. This one's a little bit better. Let me suppress the indentation. Okay, I don't know why you'd want to do this, but if you do, you can, smash it all together. There you go. So I brought color back on that one, of course. I'm going to get rid of that because that's just gross. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to time intel test. So this measure is a little bit interesting in that it has a bunch of comments, as well as a comment which by default is at the end of a line. We have the ability to force your comments to new lines as well, if you want to do that. So this one now kicks it down to a new line. So do these guys here. I'm going to turn that one off, and I'm going to go back to one of my other measures, this one right here. I'm going to change one setting. So one of the things, if you work with Power Query a lot, is that they always tell you that you have to have a comma at the end of every line, except for the line that precedes an in, which is actually a really, really long way of saying on every subsequent line, you have to have a comma at the start. We can do this with DAX now, because I can go and say Control I, and basically what this does is it puts the comma at the start of every new line. And this is something that I'm actually playing with. I kind of like this look because it makes it a little bit easier to see some more complex measures and sort of see where are the different branches of my if statements and switch statements and things like that. So different options that you have to play with in this particular case. Right, model sleuth. I need to show you some of these guys. So what are the model sleuths all about? Well, to do this one, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to close this, and I'm going to open up a different file to look at. All right. This workbook is a little bit bigger, obviously. If we look at our DAX sleuth, we can see a lot more. Green are measures that have children. Okay, so this has got child measures that are involved in it here. If you want to, you can flatten these down and try and bring it all into one page. Don't really need to in a lot of cases, but you can. If we wanted to go through, let's say burgers sold, we have a category here of burgers. I also have other things that I might want to see. Maybe I want to see draft beer as sales. Here's kind of a cool thing that you can do with this is that we can go and we can say right in the window here, I can say draft beer, and then I can say duplicate, and I can call this one draft sold in units. And what will happen at this point in time is we'll say, okay, it will go in and it will add us a new draft sold in units. Everything about it is exactly the same, including the format. It automatically adds it to the pivot table as well. And we now get a new measure inside this. So for duplicating measures, this is super, super easy, which is quite nice. Like I say, there's a full dependency tracer.
Something wrong because you have all the same answer.
How do you mean?
They all had the same number.
No, that is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's basically saying, hey, I'm going to take the category here, and I'm going to override it with draft beer, so it's actually giving me the correct value that I actually want in this particular case.
Okay. All right.
So this would be the precursor for me coming back and saying, hey, you know what? Why don't I go and take a look at this and see what are my sales as a percentage of the draft that's sold, for example. So yeah, it is doing exactly what it's supposed to. It probably would have made more sense to put it on a pivot table like this one over here, where at least have some things that are sort of set up in the same kind of place. But yeah, it definitely does work the way it's supposed to. anyhow, so that is our DAX sleuth with this indenter. All of the DAX options flow through into this as well, just so you're aware. What I now want to do is I want to show you a couple of other things. This is around the model sleuth. I'm going to run a model summary report. This works on Excel models. It can also work on Power BI models, just for reference. It gives you a nice little piece of documentation here where you can figure out how many tables you have, how many relationships, what are your measures, what is the memory that's being used by the file, what are the relationships and cardinalities, are they active, are they not active, what directions, and are they bidirectional or single directional filters? Of course, if you're pulling in from a Power BI model in that case. We can also give you some different observations. If we find some snowflaking in your model, we will tell you about that here. We will identify if your sources are not coming from Power Query, for shame, for shame. Your unique value stats, your data types, all of these matter for your compression and performance of your data model. So all of these things get documented out. All of your measures are here. By the way, this is a table. Okay, so if I go and click inside it here, you'll see the table design tab. This means that if you do use DAX Studio and you want to use their DAX indenter across our stuff, you can. Okay, that's absolutely allowed. And finally, here's all of your Power Queries. Now, where this stuff becomes really useful, though, is where you start looking into some of the other model summary reports, like memory usage. Model summary, by the way, is the one feature that does not fully work on a pro trial. It is a pro license feature, and it requires a pro license to be fully functional, a paid pro license. The reason for that is that what we will do is we will actually suppress every other line. We figure that this is documentation stuff. If you're using our tool to document your models, you can probably chip in and help us with the development because there's a ton of work that went into this. The same is true for memory usage. What memory usage does, it runs a memory usage model across your entire thing. And you can see right here that we have a bunch of stuff that is in use, but we've also got a few things that are recoverable. And what does that mean? Well, it means I added some columns to my calendar, day short, day of month, that I am not using, quarter, I'm not using it. So these things are just taking up extra space in the model. So this gives you a hit list to go back and say, not only what am I not using, but how much memory can I save in the grand scheme of things along the way. I have used this tool in one user's case to reduce their running memory down from 20 megabytes to 1 because they were carrying a bunch of extra stuff they just didn't need. Okay, so it makes their model a lot more performant, a lot stable once it's done. I'm going to skip the unused columns and measures and go directly to unused items. This is a really kind of a nice one. If you're trying to go through and really optimize your model here, you'll notice that we have one query we're not using, 11 columns that we're using, all of which are natural. None of them are calculated. We've got 2 measures that we aren't using, one of them explicit and one of them implicit. And this is also important because implicit measures, if you drag something onto a pivot table and then immediately drag it off, that implicit measure is still in your model. You just don't know it's there. So this actually can expose that and help you find it. It'll even tell you, here's your explicit measure. We're not using that one that you defined. Here is your implicit measure, sum of calendar month. Oops, somebody dragged calendar month on there by accident. And there's a staging sales detail query that we are not using either. So this could be completely removed without any effect whatsoever. Okay. And I think in the grand scheme of things, that's probably, we're at 6:20, so we're just over an hour now into the presentation. I don't want to sort of, take anybody's time that doesn't want to be here with it. There is a ton more that Monkey Tools does. We can do things like, export your data model tables to CSV. We can export your entire data model to backup. We can import your Power BI models to Excel. Maybe I should show you that one just for fun before we close this one out here. So from a brand new workbook, if I go to Monkey Tools, import BI model to Excel, I'm going to import from a Power BI model. It's going to ask me where do I want to find that particular workbook. Let me just go and grab it from this path right here. I'm going to pull in this one here called LP Azure SQL. So what it's going to do here is it's going to notice really quickly that, it's actually opening Power BI, but it's opening on my other window, but that's not a big deal. I just need Power BI to do its thing over here. And as soon as it actually instantiates the Power BI connection, it will start doing things inside this window, which doesn't usually take long. Boom, there it is. Power BI is not even open on the other side. I'm still on the splash screen, okay? Now, it has recognized that we have a specific table that wasn't generated by Power Query and can't be imported, but it's giving the option, would I like to import everything, just the queries, just the data model and measures, or just measures? The other thing you should know about this is you can import from Excel workbooks or Monkey Tools backup files. If I hit import at this point in time, it's now going to go through and it start to actually bringing in all of the individual queries here. We made a change to this a few months ago where we actually load one row of data to the data model, and then we go back and we replace all the queries with their full queries afterwards. And the reason for this is because this helps us in the case that there's any failures in connecting to the data model. It still allows us to go and grab everything. Okay. Now, a lot of these were loaded as empty tables because, as you saw earlier, I wasn't authenticated to the database. So if I close this now, come on, let me let it close. What I want to show you is that this is what we brought over. This is the data model that exists inside Power BI, okay, with all of these different tables. It's got a bunch of measures that are on here as well. And if I come back, if it'll release this, why is it not releasing it for me? Hello. Oh, it's trying to load some things right now and whatnot. But you can see all of the tables that have come across here. The relationships have been created. You can see all the measures have been created. And it's come back and it's given us a few things here that it can't do. What it said is, look, I couldn't create a metrics table here. So instead of this was a DAX-based table. Power Query doesn't, or Power Pivot doesn't support that. So we created an alternate version with Power Query. There's a bunch of data model columns that we can't hide because we don't have an API for this. Thank you, Microsoft. So you're going to have to do that work yourself. We also can't create our sorting hierarchies ourselves either. The challenge that I'm waiting for right now is that it's trying to do all of its connections here. It's trying to reload all of these guys, and it's not letting me get out of my stuff until that's actually happened. It needs to fail on all of these things. So I'm not going to sit around and wait for that to go, but just be aware of this thing. If you are going to be importing, generally you've already connected to your database. I need to set up my credentials properly in this particular case. So that's just some of the stuff that that Monkey Tools does as well in that area. And at this point, I'm going to say thanks for coming. Just for reference, if you want to get your own Monkey, you can visit Monkey Tools. You can grab the installer right from Monkey Tools there. The free version is just free. Just go and install it. We have a full knowledge base at monkeytools.ca/knowledge base. If you are part of my self-service BI Academy, you do have the the ability to get a free pro license with your annual subscription. And if you love Monkey Tools, we also have an affiliate program if you want to sell it as well. We would love to have you do that. You can sign up here. Finally, if you want to learn even more, spend 5.5 hours with me in Monkey Tools, seeing all the cool things that it does. There is, again, a free course at Skillwave on using Monkey Tools. And on that note, I'm going to end off with my Monkey Tools resources slide here. I want to thank all of you for coming and hanging out with me. If there is anybody or anything that you want to take a look at, by all means, let me know. Just a quick comment that Matt just made. I mean, way over your skill set, downloaded the application to explore. Matt, what I would suggest on this is that even if Power Query and Power Pivot are outside of the bailiwick of the things that you do normally, my guess is that you use Excel formulas. Just start exploring BiblioMonkey and using that. You'll find that it saves you some time re-injecting formulas, because I can virtually guarantee you that you do the same thing on a regular basis when you're writing a formula. When you've made that complex formula, copy it into BiblioMonkey, set those tags up, use it next time. I think you'll find it's like, whoa, hey, wow, this is allowing me to save some time. So give it a shot. But yeah, and Bill, I'm glad you found it interesting. Definitely go check it out. And I'm always interested in getting feedback there. But yeah, the course is great, Matt. Gives you lots of information there and allows you to slow down, replay it. Even gives you the example file so you can work through with the stuff that I'm using there too. So awesome. And on that note, then, I'm going to sign it off for tonight. I'll get the recording up in the next 24 to 48 hours. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and hopefully we'll see you again. Cheers.